And now, live from the studios of Freedom's Phoenix, Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Today, let us make them remember. We are not afraid!
Yeah. Welcome back to Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, here in Phoenix, Arizona. I am from the beautiful studios of Freedoms with an S, freedomsphoenix.com. And what do we hear during the break? Here on LRN, sometimes they have a Fox News break. What do they say? They go, oh man, ADHD, it's on the rise. Oh, we got, and it's not just, these other, kind of layman kind of stuff. Oh, it's professionals. Professionals say, man, all them children's they need some drugs. Got some drugs. And it's a rise with girls too. Man, it's girls. Oh, it's epidemic. Girls. HGH. Psyop. And I'm going like this. I'm thinking, okay, if that is such a big concern, certainly it's a family thing and, whatever. But I'm going, why is that at a 350 whatever million people, they're really harping on this, your kids need more drugs to sit still and be bored in public indoctrination mandatory youth camps, okay? Why is that such a big deal? Because it sells drugs, man. This is and why we're talking to Richard Grove, because I am just so... here we go. He's has time he set aside for other stuff he needed to do, but he's going to go ahead and share with us for at least another few segments until I bore him too much, but we can go at least another hour. So this is a rare opportunity. I know Richard is very busy, and it's a good time for us to go ahead and just have him overwhelm us with a bunch of references. This is a show that you go back and you listen to the first hour. You listen to the second hour, and you start making notes and you start writing down names of books and individuals and programs and projects. And once you start studying, then you go even just a little bitty bit, even the summary on each of this stuff, all of a sudden you see a pattern. So one thing in the media, I don't know how much you pay attention to the lamestream media, the media so last century, but just in the break, news break, Fox News, ADHD on the rise. Why would that be a topic? And that's another thing, before I even forget. If you got a 5-minute news break block, I know why Ian on the network puts it up. They has other stuff. People do. He would like us to take that on and be the 5-minute news kind of thing. It's just, one more thing that I just hope I don't have to do, especially if I can get Richard Grove to do a 5-minute news break for LRN. What do you think, Richard? Will you do it for us?
I would have to check my schedule
Just
before
check
I can
your
make
schedule.
a responsible decision on that.
Check your schedule. Make it part of your schedule. Heck, go have your own 5-minute thing every day to put on. We'll put it on. I'll encourage Ian to say, hey, man, you know what he said? Because I know he's looking for, why would he put Fox News up there? It's a filler. It's a top of the news thing. But, if they're doing this ADHD, what does that tell us?
Well, what you should understand before you even try to assess it is that corporate media is psychological warfare. It's strategic communications, it's propaganda, it's public relations. However you want to look at it, it is not reflective of the truth. It is not objective. It doesn't reflect both sides. It neglects many aspects, which is a fallacy. And a fallacy is a cunning attempt to trick you. So that's what you should know before you watch and consume anything. That being said, I don't tune into those channels for my news, but I do tune into those channels occasionally to pick up on the patterns of disinformation and to see what they're trying to obscure by reporting selective things that are portrayed as fact. So what that tells me is that they are creating a rise in public consciousness to tie mental health to these shootings while sidestepping the fact that the SSRI drugs, the psychotropic drugs being widely prescribed and enforced by public schooling to be prescribed is really a root cause. Well, it's a symptom of a root cause that's not being discussed on those channels. So they're providing you with a conclusion saying that these things are going on and that we should do these things, but they haven't shown you the step-by-step method by which they arrive at these conclusions, and that is the attempt to deceive you. So if you're I also heard in that news clip where the plane blew out 3 tires because a fire alarm went off, that there was no fire on the plane, right? So there are just all these little stories out there that are out of context, that are fragmented, that are just made to give you pause in your day because they don't pertain to you directly. These are things that happened outside of your general area, and for normal survival, you don't need to know about this stuff. They make it a part of their agenda to bring in all these random facts to your life so that you can get unfocused on what you need to be doing with your time, and making that a habit to tune into those channels. I mean, like for instance, this whole CNN, Piers Morgan gun campaign where you have a British subject who's already subject to gun control. So of course he espouses that position. He ties it into a presidential agenda for mental health. And if you look at Piers Morgan's history, he's a tabloid guy who's not even a reputable tabloid guy. I mean, there's numerous investigations, and he has no concern over other people's rights. He has a concern with pleasing the people who line his pockets. So I don't see how he's a valid news source just because he takes a flight across the ocean over here. He's got his own show, and they treat him like he's a legitimate journalist. Yeah, that's not journalism.
Yeah, this Piers Morgan thing, his ratings have to be nothing. I'm every time I check, it keeps going down and so on. But when I watch when he has these guys, of course, he's just trying to, I don't know what he's trying to do. But to have a British subject that got run out of Britain to begin with, he goes back, he gets arrested being part of this hacking phone thing or whatever. I'm just like, for a redcoat to have the audacity to disarm the American people, it's like the big bad guys are making fun of us. It's like they're just going, watch this. I mean, it's so insane that I'm wondering if it's working to their advantage, or they don't care, or yes, it is, or so. I put us in their mind.
They think we don't care because it's like, if you look it up, the reason that Piers Morgan got fired from his job, I believe at the Daily Mirror, was because he published torture photos that were hoax. He published a bunch of hoax photos on a variety of subjects. Like, his whole job was hoax, and he got fired for it. And that's aside from the phone hacking scandal, which is also an atrocious thing. It's an atrocious way to make your money. I guess he's just that uncreative, and that he has to rely on those tactics.
Oh, they need guys exactly like him.
He's service to the empire.
Yeah, he's like, ooh, watch what we get Piers Morgan to do. Well,
he's a pirate. He's a pirate. He's a privateer. It's because the British Empire can't come disarm us, themselves. So they send over Piers Morgan as a privateer to attack us on his own, so that if anything happens, it's just Piers Morgan. It's not the British Empire. And he's basically saying, look, there's a school shooting in Scotland, and that was a good enough reason for everyone in Britain to give up their guns. So why can't you Yanks just do the same?
Right. Now, this is one thing I want to. After Alex Jones went on Piers Morgan, he did exactly what I expected him to do. Make a rational, reasoned argument to why he was doing, bring attention to by having a request for him to be deported and blah, 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 blah. But then, of course, I knew he was going to build up into a Alex Jones rant and yelling, and you're not going to ever take, and all that kind of stuff. People go, oh, what did you think? I'm going, one, I expected it, and heck, his audience expected it and desired, do exactly what he did. And I'm going, but I think we're going to look back, it'll be a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, and go, wow, at least somebody was passionate about it. At least somebody was yelling. At least somebody got straight to the they, them, those through Piers Morgan and said, you're not going, well, of course, it's a big giant bullseye on his forehead. And if you're going to be on the list, you might as well be on top of the list. It's safer. So I'm wondering, when we come back, we'll talk about that, is, how passionate it should be. If you're just out there going, well, we have a different opinion as to what we shouldn't, or should you be screaming? Well, I don't know. We're gonna talk to Richard Grove from TragedyAndHope.com about that very thing. How passionate, out in the open, do we need to be to make our point?
A science fiction comic adventure from Big Head Press. Quantum.
Okay, I don't really, if I'm going to keep you on, I was going to play a segment. What I did, this is what I'm going, let me see if I can do this here. During the break, I just want to play what I did at the event. I mean, I just showed up and gave my little, woohoo. But this is the point that I was making. Let me see if I can pull this
up. At the Capitol the other day?
Yeah.
All right.
Save. I'll just play it. It'd be good to get it into the system here anyway. We also created 93. Second Amendment is for everyone. SafeGunOwners.org. Now, I want to just say one thing so that you guys, I appreciate y'all being here. We've been doing this for a couple of decades. It's all about a database. They are going to have now in Washington, even the Republicans, they're going to come out and they're going to say, we are not going to take your guns. We just want you on a list. We want to check to make sure what kind of prescription medication you've taken, and the doctors will have to report it. The Health Information Protection Act, okay, Obamacare, even the immigration list, everything is about getting you on a list so that when you buy a gun, they can see whether the government will give you permission to buy it. This is all about a database. When you have Republicans, Democrats, presidents, candidates, they're going to say, look, well, we got to make sure that you're not too crazy to have a gun. Based on what criteria? Yeah. Who decides this? What court? Whose court? How's this guy? I'm telling you, I just want to make sure you go SafeGunOwners.org. We have a lot of information there. But one thing, do not get suckered in, okay, I get to have my gun because this week I'm not determined crazy. Yeah. Okay, so that is what I wanted to get into the show. That's the only thing I had to say, like, I don't know, a minute or two, and say, look, man, I can see where this is going. And it wasn't until the day after this that Schumer went on Face the Nation and said, yep, that's what we doing. Thank you for playing. So that's where I'm at.
Well, that was a good thing to say.
But they're not, and that's why I had Larry Pratt on. I'm going, look, man, behind the scenes, I need to know: is this being brought up? Is it anybody know this? Is this a threat? And he's like, yeah, that's what they want. That this whole thing is that, all right, the NRA is going to come out and say, oh, we saved your guns. Don't you love us? All you got to do is get on the database. And when they took the SKS sporters, they were saying, these guns are legal, these aren't, these are, then now they're not. And the new attorney general comes in and says, no, all those things that we said, didn't violate the assault weapon ban that we had in California. Now we say it does. You got to turn them in. And the NRA said, well, get a receipt. We'll argue this in court later. Go ahead and get your $300 and turn in your gun. I don't know if you remember that. It was back like 2000. Or so. And I go, oh, really? So we created a safe storage. They say, hey, you guys put it over here. We'll go put it in the storage. Sheriff Arpaio calls. It's all big woohoo. We're going to put it on the Indian reservation so you don't have jurisdiction anyway, and a storage locker there and get over it. Oh, they didn't like that. Okay. So the thing is that I can see that it's all about databases, and then they come take it. All right, here we go.
Broadcast.lrn.fm to learn how. Broadcast.lrn.fm.
To be a part of the show, call 602-264-2800. 602-264-2800. And now, Ernest Hancock.
Yeah, what we fighting for here on Declare Your Independence. Truth, justice, and Markham Way, whatever the heck that was. That's one thing. I'm wondering. Thank you, baby. I'm wondering what your view is on the American way. When they say something like that, the American way, does that mean anything, or used to mean something, or do we have a goal? Are we going? What's the promise? You know what? Is American exceptional? Oh, okay. I tell you, this is a good way to build up into this. There's a guy in Idaho talking about going to build a freedom-oriented patriot community and so on. And they had a list. We believe this. We believe in American exceptionalism. Well, man, if that doesn't tailor the group, okay, what does that mean? Where did that phrase come from? You're the guy to ask.
Well, I wouldn't claim that America has any special exceptionalism, except that a group of people got together and said the divine right of kings is a bunch of BS, and we are living separate here, and we are self-reliant. Why should we be under the reign of a crazy king? And so that's kind of exceptional that people were able to make those statements, not be hung, not be burned in a public place. They actually made those statements, held to it, organized people, and everyone, organized around their common needs for survival and not wanting to be a slave. And there was once upon a time some self-reliance in America, but they slowly bred it out of us. They use incrementalism. It's a strategy of multi-generational agendas so that we're born into the middle stage of any of these agendas ongoing. And it takes several years for people to cogently and coherently document the facts and circulate through communications, through creating their own mass media and their own art. I mean, my podcast, the way I do it, it's a work of art. It's not a product. It's free. It's out there. It's meant to circulate among people who are thinking and looking for these answers. And I don't, advertise it or do anything artificial to stimulate that, because I believe that people who are looking for these things will bump into it if they've got, some sense about how to look around the internet, So
are you happy with the growth?
There's a ton of opportunity here, but it's being covered up because we have lost the sense of our self-reliance, because we've lost the sense of our history, and we've lost our common sense ability to think through things, remove the contradictions, and communicate cogently to other people. And so, when you were right before the break, you were asking about Alex Jones on Piers Morgan.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
And I wanted to comment on that because I think we should all be outraged into cognitive action, but I don't think we should be frustrated, angry, or violent. Okay, I want you to start thinking about these things. Think about what you saw. People who saw Alex Jones out of context, wow, that seems kind of crazy. And I think that's what he was trying to do, break people out of their hypnotic conditioning and to do something different. Because if you had watched what Piers Morgan did with Larry Pratt was very respectful and professional and trying to have a calm, cool, organized debate around facts. And what did Piers Morgan do? Piers Morgan did to Larry Pratt exactly what Alex Jones later did to Piers Morgan. And so I think it's a great example that stands out and makes people aware that something is going on, because if he hadn't done it that way, people would have just kept on, turning channels, and it would have been no news story.
That's kind of my opinion.
He did wake some people out of their trance, and that's what caused the discussion. And now we're able to get more cogent facts out there and get away from this false debate that goes on TV where they're using a Delphi technique with planned questions, planned answers. And that's another good reason that Alex didn't answer those questions, because he would have fallen into the snares that Piers was laying with his straw man arguments and sophisticated rhetoric.
I know. How many chimpanzees can dance on the head of a pin or something? I'm like, hey, man,
there
brother.
is no mechanical shark in the water. I thought that was, for people who actually get, for the choir, for the people who get what he's saying, that was a point where you could just laugh and be like, look, there's somebody on national TV, on CNN, on the Psychological Warfare Network that's actually spitting a little truth as fast as he can. And you have to admire that, because it doesn't go on too often in this country. And yes, there's a variety of other ways. And people who say, well, I would have done it differently, or I would have done it like this, or he made it worse for the gun movement. No, the gun movement was doomed unless people start to have real connective conversations about this, about the facts, about our common needs for survival and being secure, and how we can go about that. There are differences about how to go about it and be secure. Some people think they need to own a gun, and some people think they can afford to wait on the government to protect you. And this country was not founded on waiting for the government to protect you, because those people lived with a government that did not protect them and took advantage of them and housed troops with them and made unfair taxes on them and made them in every way slaves. And that's why they fought back. And you can only fight back when you have equivalent arms. And according to Carol Quigley in Tragedy and Hope, he says in the 1930s, that went away because the military arms and their ability to create mass death was so much larger than anything that an individual could ever own that you could never have a violent revolution. So it's not about violent revolution against any state authority or government or stuff like this, because they outarm everybody. But it's also about the fact that you have the right to defend your house, your property, your family. That is your inherent right as a human being. And that never goes away, regardless of how many drones or nuclear weapons the governments have.
You know, that's one thing that a lot of people say, oh, Ernie, well, you think you're going to and this and that, and you're never, and I'm going, man, you guys don't get it. You know, it's not about my ability to compete with a Apache gunship, okay? It's about me just being able to try. But, you know, that's not, if you are in a gun battle with the government, you already lost. I mean, it has to be won before then. And that's one thing that Adams would go on about, you know, with his faults. He would say, you know, the revolution was fought between the ears, you know, way before the shot heard around the world. You know, the outcome was already predetermined way before that. What we're doing right here, right now, that is what's important. This is where the battle's being won. And I want to get your opinion on this. Do you think that the big bad guys anticipated the effectiveness and the power of communication, the internet, and so on? I mean, we got Rockefeller up there. Yeah, we should have never allowed the internet to happen. Damn it, you know, it's messing up with our crap. Okay.
Well, I would cite history. Let's go to H.G. Wells and his notion for a world encyclopedia that would act in every way as the internet does. So when you look at the science fiction of people like H.G. Wells, who was part of hanging out with the Rhodes Roundtable Group and these other people planning the lives of people a century before they were even born, you see the trail that leads up to them creating the internet as a way to collect all this information on us, to make these profiles, to create databases, to be able to predict and manage you as an individual beyond your ability to be free of it. It takes away all your rights to privacy because the surveillance is in your home. It's in your TV. It's in your new washer and dryer. It's in the smart meter being attached to your house. They have a full spectrum dominance plan, and it makes the gulag look like something like on a playground for kids to play with, because what the Soviets dreamed of, this is according to Zbigniew Brzezinski, they had all these uses of cybernetics back then, but they did not have the technological capacity to take advantage of the information and process it to use it against their citizens. And that's why the Soviet Union fell. Read it. That's Brzezinski.
Okay, when we come back, let me make a note. I want to make sure we get into details of this. The link between computers, IBM, Nazi Germany, Hitler, the process by which they start rounding people up. You know, how was that even possible in the 30s? And amazing that they all of a sudden, the unlimited resources of government said, oh, we got the ability to classify, identify, go getify. Ooh, let's do it.
Do you want to support good people who disobey bad?
Okay, when we come back, let's do that. You can give the IBM story, can't you?
Yeah. Herman Hollerith.
All right.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go ahead and do that. And then what else we want to make sure we get in?
Well, I want to make the point that the Nazis were funded by Britain and the United States, and that when we brought people over in Operation Paperclip, their comments were to the effect of, oh, this is the home, like they thought they were leaving the Reich, but really they went to the homeland of the Reich. And that's where we brought the scientists over for MK Ultra, which is now being applied into, you know, the pathologizing of dissent through schools and drugging of our children and adults. So that's all Rockefeller Foundation funded, created the same year as the Federal Reserve. And there's an interesting history to be told through all of that, because Standard Oil helped IG Farben and the Nazis, and that plays in with Herman Hollerith and IBM.
All right. Yeah, I see how I'm going to introduce this. Okay. I'll go ahead and just give kind of a quick disc, boom, then Richard, go. And then you cover all that. All right. So how things, keep in mind we're still doing the recording for the video archive. But, you know, how things going with you guys personally? Or anything okay?
No, everything's, it's, you know, I don't want to, like, speak too early, but things have been going pretty good lately. We've been more getting in our stride, and all the things that we've been working to build over the last 2 years are about to bear fruit. And I think people are going to really enjoy it, because it's going to be a very high production value, content rich with references and primary sources, and creating components that people can use for themselves and pass around to their friends. And it's, you know, short informational pieces on these things that people aren't aware of but really need to be aware of in order to be free and survive and thrive and pursue and attain happiness.
Wow, I think you should put that in 5-minute news breaks that would go on LRN at the top that would include to promote your whatever.
I might be able to help you find someone to fill that with integrity, but I don't know that I can take it upon myself and maintain.
Well, you can take it
integrity
upon
to my other
yourself to
occupation.
find someone with integrity. I mean, you know, this is we got Fox News at the top of the hour. Are you kidding me? And I know
I'm sure now that I know about that problem, we can figure out a way to get it fixed.
Please, you know, and I know you'd be open to it. We talked about it, and one of the things is he's like, "Now, come on, Ernie, man, you can do a 5-minute every, you know." But then that's like, I mean, hell, it's, you know how it is. There's so many things to be responsible, certainly to take on a, you know, because then you got to actually.
I do know how it is, which is why we're going to both work to delegate this to someone else who needs to work on something that's 5 minutes long consistently.
Amen, brother. And you know, there's we can hook it up and do and kind of brought to you by alternate. You know, Freedom's Phoenix or Tragedy and Hope and whatever they're doing or something, and we'll work out something. But we need to have this kind of perspective out there. Now, Ian, he's probably, you know, of course, it's up to him, but I think he'd be open to that. He's looking to have someone do. They do a little cop block here, you know, a little Freedom whatever organization here, a little there. And when they don't have enough new content, he just flips on, you know, Fox News because he can. And I'm just like, I need to have more options for them. So, because I get emails and phone calls from you, you go, at the top of that Fox News? That's what you got after Ernie. I listen to this, you know, ADHD on the right. You know, see.
No, it's part of you being objective. You're giving 5 minutes to the other side so they can spew their propaganda, and then it makes what we do more refreshing for people.
And that's one way to look at it. That's kind of what happens. I'm just like, wow, this is their A game. That's it. That's all they got.
If you want your food to taste better, give them a bad appetizer before the main dish.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
You can connect with the Liberty Radio Network via our Facebook page at facebook.lrn.fm. That's facebook.lrn.fm.
Roads? It's the Ernest Hancock Show. Where we're going, there aren't any roads.
Okay, we're right back with Richard Grove, tragedyandhope.com. This is one thing I want to do. I want to go ahead and kind of give you a little bit of the technology. When did technology first start really showing its influence? Okay. It's
several thousand years ago, and it comes through maritime culture and shipping and navies and warfare is the juxtaposition of how technology comes to be relied upon in our culture, especially as a warfare culture today.
Well, the one that, you know, the current media kind of, you know, what I'm building up to is, what was it? Munich Olympics, 1930? Was it 1930 or 36 or whenever it was? Here we have the Munich Olympics, and what's the first thing? Man, the first television broadcast. If you remember the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, she's up there, you know, oh, the aliens are, you know, rebroadcasting back. Oh, we got, there's Hitler up there doing his television broadcast, the first broadcast that, you know, went out, left Earth, and here we go, there's television, okay? Now, this first video broadcasting going out, Nazi Germany, ooh, they love that propaganda. From what? You know, just audio and visual and imagery and big giant crowds and colorful whatever. You see them, you go, man, we know who's freaking dominant influence in this country, okay? So that's what, it's all this propaganda stuff, this technology. Then here comes the ability to start classifying, get little barcodes on, well, not even punch cards, you know, IBM. And then that is to, you know, supply and to help. It's like watching V for Vendetta. You got the rich people, what? The guys that own the pharmaceutical companies. Oh, here's a big disease. Here's a virus. Here's everybody dying. Oh, guess what? We got the cure. I mean, this is, it's just like I can see it coming. It's happened before. So I wanted Richard, he's well-versed in this, to kind of give us the IBM story. You know, how that goes. And then the Operation Paperclip was when the United States went and got the scientists and so on. It's kind of a competition between the Soviet Union and the U.S. on how we're going to, you know, bring them over and be part of our freaking secret, whatever the heck, okay? Now, this has a big lineage that goes from the individuals that made a lot of money, they had the influence, that saw the capacity of what was done in Germany, and they embraced it and put it under your radar screen just a little bit, and it continues for a reason. We're going to ask Richard what that is. Can you start off in Germany and IBM or even before when this all comes in and kind of tell us the story, would you please?
All right, so I'm gonna start a little earlier than that with Plato in his book The Republic, where he talks about the noble lie, which is deception. It's psychological warfare to lead the masses in an artificial direction of the ruling elites, and the term kybernetes, which is the term cybernetics, or the helmsman, the art of steering the ship of state, the art of ruling or governing many people. And so that's the technological aspect. There's psychological warfare and technology. Plato, Republic, 2,500 years ago. Now we can come up to the applications, and as we learned more and more and built upon, all these technological innovations of the Renaissance, we come into the 20th century, and there's a chap named Herman Hollerith who creates the IBM punch card. It's the Hollerith machine that later becomes the foundation of International Business Machines, later run by Thomas Watson. So Thomas Watson of IBM is doing business with Hitler, as are the Rockefeller, Standard Oil, funding IG Farben, and really helping to build out the Third Reich. There's many other U.S. financiers of Hitler. You can find the excellent resource that Zbigniew Brzezinski would recommend would be Anthony C. Sutton's trilogy on Wall Street funding the Bolsheviks, the Nazis, and FDR. So what you can see is, Nazi and Soviet, technology was based upon Western financing. So there was no Cold War. It was funded by the same people funding this country. It's a useful psychological warfare illusion that Edward Bernays noticed that, fear is innate. And instead of teaching people critical thinking, that they could take away information, censor information, use propaganda, and create a state of fear that would make perpetual war through the 20th century, so that the world could then be globalized by taking away nationhood, taking away individual rights in the name of creating everlasting peace. That's their agenda for the last 150 years. The Rockefellers play a major part in that, along with IBM. IBM's claim to fame is that they use the punch card innovation of computing to categorize different prisoners of war into different prison camps and labor camps and concentration camps in Germany. So the fact that IBM, which is doing business out of its headquarters in New York during the time of war, is also aiding the enemy, but it's at a level above government and politics because they're not subject to the same rules that everyone else seems to be subject to. You've got characters like Alan Dulles, whose specialty in Bern, Switzerland, was helping international companies circumvent U.S. law. That was well before his time at the OSS and CIA. So that's how he gets his job. The United States intelligence community that's created in the 20s, 30s, 40s, these are all Wall Street bankers and lawyers. So now you're taking into effect, there's a big money trust that's being created with these corporate entities. They shuffle it into tax-free foundations who circumvent U.S. law and do business internationally no matter who the enemy is because there's profit in it. The same Rockefeller eugenics projects that trained Joseph Mengele and created the Kaiser Wilhelm Center for Eugenics in Germany, all these same investments then come back to America after World War II to roost through Operation Paperclip, where we bring back all these Nazis that the Rockefellers and other groups had invested in. They bring their scientific acumen back to America, where it's then applied to create Manchurian candidates through MK to take away the individuality, to make people robots, all the same things that Wilhelm Wundt was teaching in his PhDs in the 1800s in Prussia. So with all of these things coming together, IBM, Standard Oil, the Nazis, the eugenics, the Bush financing of the Nazis, all the other Anglo-American financing of the Nazis, and coupling that together with technology and psychological warfare, which was openly practiced during World War II by people like Eisenhower, who was a member of psychological warfare in Europe, William S. Paley, who after World War II becomes the head of CBS, C.D. Jackson, who after World War II becomes in charge of Time Life. So you have people in wartime who are in psychological warfare then going to work in media. And this is where the bridge is. You have the control through the television of the people, that flickering, commercial that they give for Hitler inside of Contact. That is the use of technology and psychological warfare to control individuals, to collectivize them, to make them coherent to group tendencies, to make them compliant. It's about compliance and social control, and they can do that through databasing your DNA, your social habits, and your ownership of being able to defend yourself.
Here's another thing that I thought that was interesting. They wanted Adam Lazara, what are they, the Sandy Hook guy. There was a big thing. You started seeing it for a few days. They wanted to classify, identify, map his genes, the DNA. We're going to find the evil gene. We're going to find whatever it is. We're going to use eugenics to weed out the Adam Lazarus. And I'm going, wow, man, if they didn't just, jump the broom right there. I'm going, man, we're going to marry this with, all the stuff that we always wanted to do. You too dumb, you too ugly, you two got whatever gene somewhere. We mapped it out and, deadbeat to them or put them in somewhere or do something. So I'm wondering, what if you noticed that or how that impacted you?
Well, I observed the Sandy Hook situation just like I observed the Colorado situation, and all of these types of mass murders in gun-free zones. There are patterns to them. There's the role of psychotropic drugs in the candidates who are there to create the havoc and create the murder. And what I see is the use of emotional rhetoric, the use of non-logic, non-reason. They bring children and all these situations that are highly charged, highly emotional, and we have very little factual insight into the evidence. That's a controlled situation that Lippmann would prescribe for psychological warfare. So what we have to understand is from the inception that they are creating cognitive dissonance through the public schooling system, which they then pathologize as dissent against authority, which they then prescribe psychotropic drugs. And there are millions of individuals in this country who are under those circumstances.
No, I wonder why they're trying to make it to where, hey, we can pre-identify this. In fact, that's exactly what happened. We have up on the top of Freedom's Phoenix, you'll see a little Darth Vader thing up there that says, "Thank you for contacting me regarding our Second Amendment rights by U.S. Representative here in Arizona, Republican Trent Franks." And he has a phrase in there I want to repeat.
Should you be able to earn an honest living?
Okay, when we come back, I don't know if you know about this. Go to the top of Freedom's Phoenix, and you'll see underneath the video streaming thing, second one down, it says, "Thank you for contacting me." It's green, and it has like an orange icon in there with a Darth Vader. Click on that, and I'll show you something.
All right, I was one step behind. Which menu in Freedom Phoenix?
At the very top, you'll see the little, stories. It's like right below the video player on the top left, and it has "Thank you for contacting." Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay, click that, go down, and this is his blah, 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 blah. And you go into the second paragraph where I got it bolded there. "We should attempt to detect." You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Read that phrase.
Oh, yeah. Pre-crime.
Exactly.
Well, this is okay, so I Skyped you a link because I figured that this is where the conversation would go. There's a single article that if people read that single article that I Skyped you, I know it's posted on a cholesterol site, but it's a valid book review. It's an excellent book review. If you read through that, you'll understand everything that's going on. It's like the single most. I'm gonna give you this other link. Let me just look for it. With a bunch of references for it. It's in my podcast notes. Right here. All right, so there's a book review, and then there's a chronological timeline. And even though some of the references in the chronological timeline aren't the primary references, I'm familiar with the primary references, and overall this timeline's a great resource and can lead one to understand the depth of this situation.
Okay, I'm putting it up. Hold on. Send it to Donna. Hey, Don, I'm sending this to put in this link, the eugenics thing, is to put it into the second hour of today's show and then put it up as its own thing on top of the... Okay, got it going, man. Now, the Rockefeller Foundation Molecular Vision of Life, what's that about?
That is it's authored by an MIT graduate, and it basically goes into all this stuff that we think is conspiracy theory, but it shows the actual, here's the history of the Rockefeller Foundation as juxtaposed to redefining eugenics as molecular biology so that they can carry out all these different experiments in public view, because the Nazis gave everyone a bad taste for eugenics. Yep. It's all the same people funding it.
Okay, now when we come back, I'm going to go ahead and bring up this Trent Franks thing, because I see this. I mean, and he's just this type. I know him personally, okay? Went to church together. He ran the nursery, helped raise my kids. I mean, he first started running for Congress. I donated to him, sat at the head table when he announced we're all buddies, all right? And then it became very clear to me in the 90s that, man, he's one of them. And I mean, he was the deciding vote, got the ride on Air Force One with President Bush because he was the deciding vote on Medicare D. The prescription meds and so on, he fell on the sword for the man, okay? So I'm just going, okay, I can see where this is going. And for a phrase like this to come out of him, I already know what it means. All right, here we go.
Live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM. While our satellite channel is free to listen to, it's not free for us. You can help us cover our satellite costs with the chip-in on the right side of the page at LRN.FM.
It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Welcome back. I want to get right back to this. We're with Richard Grove from Tragedy and Hope, okay? TragedyandHope.com. And if you've been listening to the show, you go, ooh, we got to go check that boy out. Well, it's not just him. It's he and his significant, and they do a lot of work with a lot of other people, and a lot of, energy and powerful young minds that have gotten hold of, like a Tasmanian devil. They got their teeth into it, and okay? So this is good. Now, where I wanted to bring this up, last week, a friend of mine sent me a response from Representative Congressman Trent Franks, a Republican here. Now, hey, I'm part of the Liberty Caucus. I went and sat in a meeting with Ron Paul, and I know I know him, okay? Let me tell you, he is definitely on board with the bad guys. He was the deciding vote on, Medicare D, the prescription med thing. They needed one. Who's going to be the last guy to fall on the sword and get us all $1 trillion in debt and more in prescription for the drug man, okay? Who's the drug man? Who's the guy? Who's the man going to do that for the drug company? Who is it? Trent Franks. And then what did he get out of it? He got a ride on Air Force One. And it landed in Las Vegas. They didn't want to come to Arizona because they knew there was a whole bunch of people going, They didn't want to have bad press. So that aside, when he was asked about, what's your Second Amendment spiel, he comes up with this. Blah, 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 Second Amendment, Second Amendment, Second Amendment. And then you look at the top of Freedom's Phoenix right now, you'll see, thank you for your letter. I left it up there, and this is why. We should, quote, Trent Franks, Republican congressman in Arizona, we should attempt to detect these mentally unstable individuals at an earlier time with hopes of keeping weapons out of their hands, but that should be the extent of further government interference.
So is he talking about before people, like when dudes like him run for Congress, that's when we should decide?
They get to decide. I don't know.
No. We should attempt to detect these mentally unstable individuals, like when they apply to run for Congress in his position. Is that when we're supposed to identify him?
That's when I would. But I know your little humor. But I'm telling you, it's going to be by whatever criteria they decide, which includes when they do this Adam Lazzara thing, and they said, oh, we got to get some DNA, and we got to find out if there's some evil gene in there. We're going to do some eugenics. We're going to look. See anybody that's got this little whatever the heck it is that they it may be. There may be something predisposing people, their DNA, kind of, just question authority a little bit much. Because this is what we do as human beings. When we breed animals, we'll breed certain traits into different breeds of dogs. We want them more aggressive. We want them less aggressive. We want them more docile. We want them more assertive. We want, what? And they're looking at what is it that makes if Richard Grove and Ernest Hancock and Alex Jones and Larry Pratt and all these other people and Ian Freeman, all these guys have the same gene. Guess what gene we're targeting? Okay? So this is now in their minds, if we can find a common, we got to go get them what for? Because we need livestock. We need people just literate enough to just follow instructions, okay? Like John Taylor Gatto was saying. He's going, look, man, this is Prussian model of you're just out there to serve the state, and you start getting a little too uppity, we got to slap you down. Well, now I'm going, look, is there something that brings us to this? Is there something that we're looking for, that there's evidence of this? You know, and you say there is. What is it?
First, I'd like to observe the beginning of that paragraph to which you read the end, because it's an argument. These are declarative statements, right? It begins with, Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut suffered a horrible tragedy in December 2012. And it ends with the statement, we should attempt to detect these mentally unstable individuals at an earlier time with the hopes of keeping the weapons out of their hands, right? So that's the end of his argument. He begins it with an emotional appeal. And I state this. If you want to be emotional about the kids who died at Sandy Hook or anyone else that dies at any of these tragedies, you have to be equally emotional for the hundreds of people being killed in drone attacks overseas, for the 500,000 Iraqi children that was killed, that were killed under the, the Iraq sanctions under Madeleine Albright, right? So I feel equally for all these people who were being adversely affected by authority and tyranny and the misappropriation of hard-earned, tax dollars in order to kill people overseas and in our own country. I would note that for decade after decade after decade, for the past 200 years, we have not had these massive shootings in this way. And the question is, did we not have AR-15s in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s? Right?
Of course we did.
And so there is something going on. And there happens to be an agenda since 1961 under the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research to disarm all countries, all populations around the planet for the purposes of their agenda. And their
that's
agenda
one
is
thing that
total
was
control.
missed.
They want a monopoly of force.
That's one thing that was missed. During all of this, at the same time, is the United Nations Small Arms Treaty, we get to take everybody shouldn't have a gun, especially America thing going on. Everybody kind of lost sight of that. Tell us about that.
Well, it's been going on since 1961, and like any other Fabian strategy, it's incremental, and it's been going on a long time, and they state their goals openly a long time ago, and then they come up with questions of how to achieve those goals. What types of scenarios do the United States population need to undergo in order to have their beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors transitioned from self-reliance and self-preservation to that of waiting for the state to protect its livestock? Police respond to crimes. They do not prevent them. And the prevention through eugenics methods, where they're going to classify people's DNA and say that you have this or that, and they're going to breed you out of existence. The two links that I sent you, the first link is a book review to the MIT authored Molecular Vision of Life, of how they redefined eugenics because their investments in Nazi Germany brought them some bad PR, so they called it molecular biology. This is where they mapped out DNA. And it's all Rockefeller Foundation, research grants. And the book review goes through. That way you don't have to spend a bunch of money because the book is expensive. But go ahead and read the review and start getting the facts together and decide whether or not you want to invest in that book, because it is a single book that can help you understand this agenda and how it's being played out step by step. And it's been planned for decades. And it's right there. It's an open conspiracy. They hope that you don't read it. But they are very arrogant, and they like to write their plans out ahead of time. So this is ongoing. It is an open conspiracy because they wrote it down, and you can watch them progress through each of these tenets that they have laid out. So the cloaking of eugenics for this national database, and the reason for it is because of Sandy Hook, right? And so you just have to question how these people formulate their logic when having a database would not have prevented any of these shootings. These people were not legal gun owners. Adam Lanza applied 5 times to get a firearm and was denied. So that shows that the laws, the 20,000 laws that are in place, they do work. The problem is criminals don't follow the laws. That's the definition of a criminal. We have to plan for criminality because it has existed and it has been the bane of human existence. The reason our economy is in the crapper is because there's criminality, there's corruption, and it's unchecked, it's unresisted because people lack the intellectual self-defense and lack the use of their First Amendment in creative ways between each other and not at their government who is seeking to oppress them. And that is forcing people to now say, hey, wait, we might have to dust off the Second Amendment because it is the last resort, it is the last defense against tyranny. But you need the First Amendment critical thinking to be able to know what to do and when to be armed and when to be ready to be resistant.
Claire Wolfe wrote the book in the early 90s that was popular, and it said 101 things to do till the revolution. And the popular quote that was extracted from there that was you might have heard is, we're at that awkward time in America where it's too late to work within the system, but it's too early to start shooting the bastards. And I'm kind of, at what point does that happen? And if we used violence, if you went after, where would you even target it? We're not up against even really individuals as much as we're against a philosophy, as we're against a mechanism, method. And I'm wondering,
the willing servitude, the voluntary servitude to these ideas. Now, I don't believe in violent revolution at this point, but I do believe that people should have the ability to defend themselves against aggressors. I believe in non-aggression, not non-violence. Gandhi didn't even believe in non-violence. In his biography, he says the darkest day in India is when the British took everyone's guns, because along with the guns go to the self-esteem of being able to protect yourself against animals or human predators. There are intraspecific kleptoparasites, people of the same species who prey and plunder those who produce. That comes out of Rothschild eugenics studies in the 1950s, coined by a Rothschild. So they've given us a name for what's going on. Now we can talk about it.
Yep. Here we go. What are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Well, I tell you one thing you can do about it. You can learn what's happening. You can get it in the right and proper context. You can learn what's already happened. We're just on a repeat. And there are ominous parallels between what's going now and what's happened before, and the results are always the same. The only difference is that we have access to information on, or at least for now, right now. You can inform and arm yourself between the ears. And one of the best places for that, tragedyandhope.com. Thanks for taking special extra time with us there, Richard Grove. Thank you very much. Hold on a second. I'll be right with you.